What would the world look like if people felt like they mattered? Welcome to the Lead with Love podcast, exploring what it means to lead with love in business and life. I'm your host, Jada Selner, and in this show, I'll share meaningful conversations to help you, the creative, the entrepreneur, the world changer, reach more people, go after your dreams, and serve your community with love. I appreciate you joining me. Now let's get cozy and start today's episode. In this episode of Lead with Love, I talk to my dear friend and online marketing expert, Amy Porterfield. She's the host of one of my favorite and top-ranked business podcast called Online Marketing Made Easy. And she's also the creator of some amazing best-selling marketing courses like List Builders Lab and Courses That Convert. Now, Amy has worked with big brands like Harley Davidson Motorcycles and even peak performance coach Tony Robbins, where she oversaw the content development team. So if you want to learn about streamlining content creation, Amy is your girl. Now, what I love about Amy is how intentional she has been in building the right business model for her. She's built a multiple seven-figure education company as an introvert and using that to her advantage. And we actually talk more about this in this episode. She also deeply cares about serving and nurturing her global community of over 250,000 online entrepreneurs. And in this episode, she shares how she does it. So you'll also hear us talk about a time when Amy didn't have compassion for herself and the one mistake she couldn't shake for years. I just love how honest Amy is in our conversation. She also will share some advice for people wanting to grow an email list as quickly as possible. And we talk about tips for resetting and replenishing after burnout. And she also shares how she's been able to infuse authenticity into her business, vulnerability hangovers included. And Amy's grounded and tangible approach really helps you as a business owner move away from the step by step and into the action by action, which I just love so much because you guys know I am a huge fan of taking imperfect action. And of course, she does this with so much love for her students and faithful podcast listeners, me included. So let's get cozy with Amy Porterfield. Hi, Amy.
Hey, girl. So glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited for us to get cozy today. And I just have to tell, I've been having like an online biz girl crush on you for many, many, many years. I purchased this Facebook Profit Lab way back in the day. And since then, we've been able to, be at similar events. And I had an opportunity to speak at your the
entrepreneur experience. Yeah.
Yes. Which is such a cool event. And I remember we were sitting having coffee with my business partner, co-founder of Simple Green Smoothies, Jen. And you were talking about not doing a live event. And I was like, why? And you're like, I get so tired and drained. And I was just like, what if you bring all your friends to just speak and share their brilliance so that you're not having to hold all that space and energy. And now you totally
we do that now, which is so fun.
I love it. So I'm just a huge fan of your work and how you show up in the world. And you're super, super transparent and vulnerable. So I'm excited for my community to get to learn more about you today.
Well, thank you. I mean, I consider you a friend, and I'm so glad we got to meet each other, work together, and then stay friends. So it is truly a pleasure to be here.
Yay. So, this podcast is called Lead with Love. And I always like to start it off with a really big and deep question so we can just dive in right away. So, my question for you is, what does leading with love mean to you? And how do you put love into practice in your business?
Ooh, so good. So when I think about that question, what does leading with love mean to me? It means leading with compassion in everything I do. And that means compassion for myself as well as compassion for those I serve. I serve a lot of people that are trying to get their businesses off the ground. And we know that is not easy. And so they stumble, they've got questions, they feel less than, they feel behind a lot of the time. So for me and what I do, leading with love means to really meet somebody where they're at and have compassion, no matter if I can relate, if I agree, or anything. And then being kind to myself as well, because I'm growing this business at the same time and I'm going to stumble and I'm going to make mistakes and things aren't going to go smoothly. And I have to have grace and have compassion for myself. So to me, that's what it looks like. And every single day when we are answering questions I've probably answered 100 times, I think compassion. How would I show up today if I had compassion? So that's what it means to me.
I love that you mentioned that you're probably getting questions asked over and over again, that same thing, right? And I know as business owners or even teachers that people can get annoyed by stuff like that of like, oh, can't they just Google it? And I just love that you're like, no, this is me being in a spirit of compassion and grace for this person who is trusting me to ask these questions and I have the answers. So I love that you are really looking at it from that place. And I'm curious for you, you talked about compassion and grace with yourself. Is there a time where maybe you've beat yourself up or didn't have so much compassion for yourself?
Oh, more often than not. This is something I actually struggle with. I have very high standards for myself that I would never put on somebody else, and which I have to remind myself, would you do that with your son, Kate? Or would you talk to your husband, Hobie, like that? Or I remind myself of that because, there's times in my business, especially where I'll make a misstep or spend more money than I had planned or didn't plan enough. So something kind of fell apart. And I'm the only one that I turn to like, why would you do that? You know better. You've been in business for a while. And I hear myself and then I think, oh no, I can't go down that road. I'm able to hear it and pivot really quickly. Whereas years ago when I was starting this, I'd stay there for a few days. Now it's more like an hour or a moment. So I am learning, but it still very much happens.
Yeah. So in that hour, what do you do to make that pivot?
So I'm learning something that I've been practicing this year, and that is that thoughts create feelings and feelings create actions. And you can always choose a different thought to have a different feeling. So I have to, and this is something I practice every day, I have to identify if I'm beating myself up, I have to ask myself, what am I making this mean? What am I making this big mistake I just made? Or let's not even call it big mistake. Something happened. That's a fact. What am I making it mean? And I'll instantly turn to the thought of, I'm not good enough. I don't have what it takes to make this work. I always mess up. And then of course that feeling is, I feel horrible. I feel sad. I feel depressed. I feel frustrated. So I want to feel a different way. So I think, what's a different thought I could choose? Now, easier said than done, but I really do practice this. And I think, well, what it means is, one, I'm not going to make that mistake again. And two, everything is a learning experience. Everything, as I tell my students that all the time. So I literally in that hour choose a different thought, which creates a different feeling for me, which then I act differently. So it is something I practice every day.
Yeah. Is there a specific time that you could think of when maybe you didn't have those tools and how, like what was happening, what was going on specifically? I'd just love to hear a specific story around that and then how you kind of found the compassion and grace.
So a while ago when I was just starting out and did not have anything about changing thoughts and feelings and actions, I had no idea about any of that. I had spent $20,000 to get some surveys created in my business. Now, no one should be spending $20,000 to get some surveys created. However, I was in a place that I was feeling desperate to build my list faster and show up in a bigger way and make a splash. This was many years ago. And I thought I was going to too slow. And so someone approached me. She said, I can make these surveys for you. It would be amazing. And instantly I just said yes. And I paid her $20,000. And then I realized this is not the right person I should be working with. I'm not going to get the surveys I need. And it all basically fell apart quickly. And I never got what I wanted from this person. Now, I put that on me. I probably didn't communicate well. I didn't handle the situation well at all. But for so long, like years, that was the one mistake that I couldn't shake off. Like $20,000. That is a lot of money for anybody, no matter how much you make. And I thought, you screwed up so bad. Like, don't tell anybody. Don't talk about it. The pit of my stomach would hurt when I think about it. A year later, I'd be thinking, before I spent a big amount of money on something important, that I had researched this time and slowed down, and it was a good decision. I'd always think, but remember when you messed up big time? So I'd like slap myself down over and over again. It wasn't until recently that I was able to shake that one off.
So you talked about this, like wanting to make a big splash and grow your email list as fast as possible. And I know that you have an amazing list building course. And so I'm curious, what would you say to your students who are kind of in that same energy of, I want to make a big splash. I want to grow my list as fast as possible. What do you say to them?
Great question. I always say that if you will slow down and if you will look at every single person on your list as a human being, and I always tease them, I'll say, you just said you have only 300 people on your list. Imagine if I invited all 300 people to come over for dinner tonight. Would you tell me that's a small list now? I mean, it's different when you start to think of every single person as a human that has problems and challenges and hopes and dreams, and you speak to them as though you genuinely care about that one person. It's a game changer. So I always tell my students, learn from my mistakes. One, we don't need to rush this. Two, it's not about the list size. It truly is about the quality. And I've seen people do amazing things with 300 people on their list versus thousands because they slow down to have a relationship with those people. So I have a very different conversation I have now than I did back then.
Oh, I love that, to slow down and to build the real relationship, and just that vision of, 300 people. If they were in a room with you or if they were having dinner with you, yes, like
it's a different ballgame. Yes, right? So excited.
Oh, I love that. So you are amazing at list building, amazing at building a community online. And I'm curious, what have you been able to do? Like, what would you say are some of the key ingredients to build your community over time?
Lately, okay, so I'm going to give you one that I've recently discovered over the last year, and that is this whole idea of being as real as I can be. Now, I know the words vulnerable and transparent, that we use them a lot. I get that. However, it's so easy to say you're being vulnerable, and then if you really look at it, most of us are not. At least in my experience, I was not. So over the last year, I thought, I know I'm being vulnerable when I tell you a story or talk about something that I kind of don't want to talk about, that I'd rather sugarcoat it and make me look like it's my highlight reel versus the really gritty stuff. When I have a little tinge in my stomach, like, oh, maybe this is a little bit too much oversharing, I actually know I'm on the right track, because I wouldn't say I'm a private person, but I also come from this thought of like, they don't care about that stuff. They want to know business from me.
Right.
And then I realized I am very wrong, because I love hearing the personal stuff from people I follow. Bring it on.
Yeah. So can you think about the first time that what was like the first story that you're like, okay, I'm going there. What was that first story?
It was my weight story. So the very first time I did this was last year. So that's why it feels very new to me. So here's what happened. I have battled my weight since I was a little girl, and I've been a lot thinner than I am now. And so over the years, I've been thinner because I've crash dieted and done crazy things to lose weight and all that. So over the years, I have been very self-conscious of my weight, and I do video. And so I've got to show up. It's no secret I'm overweight. However, it feels like a very shameful, dirty secret inside of me. Mm-hmm. And So this is something I've battled with over and over again. I don't want to do video because I don't like the way I look. And then I realized, well, I definitely care about my business. And truth be told, I'm competitive. So I want to win. And I realized if I don't do video, people can pass me up in a minute. I mean, it's very true that video is what is working now. And it's because it's so personal and you can connect. And I wanted that with my audience. So I thought, I'm doing video, but I hate it because of my weight. And then I thought, what if I tell people the real truth about why I don't enjoy video? And what if I just say, I'm overweight and I'm so insecure about it. And sometimes I want to hide under my desk, but here I am anyway. And so I did a 9-minute, totally scripted podcast. And my podcasts are not scripted, but I could not get through that one without a little script. And I wrote it. And then my friend who you know too, Jasmine Starr, read it for me and like it gave me some suggestions and I fixed it. And it was even better because it was more true, more raw. And I did it. And then I thought, oh my God, I think I made a big mistake. Maybe we better not air that. Like I did have the conversation with my team, like maybe this is getting a little crazy. They're like, no, we're doing it. So anyway, that episode went out. And I did feel freer just instantly before anyone gave me any feedback once it went live. But then I started showing up at live events and it is crazy. I teach list building and webinars and course creation. And 99% of the time I talk about marketing, but 99% of the time women will come up to me and say, your weight episode, that's how I knew I loved you. Or that's when I knew you were on my team. You get me. It gives me chills just telling you now.
I'm getting them too.
I thought, who knew that would do it? So that was the moment that I thought, oh, Amy, come on, do more of this. This is what really works. And I've done more of it since.
Have you had any vulnerability hangover? Like, do you have that after you share more of those personal things, or does it start to get more comfortable over time as you do it?
I still have the hangover. So it hasn't gotten more comfortable over time because I've truly only done it 3 times now. So I did that. And then I did a 20 questions on my podcast. It's not even out yet. And then I did 10 things I'm embarrassed to tell you on my podcast. Now, what's hard for me is I teach marketing. So I'm thinking people don't like, this is so off brand for me, but I have to let go of that because I want a true connection with my audience. So none of it is off brand if I'm really connecting with them. So I have to remember that because I come from a business mindset.
Yeah.
But I did these 14 things. And one of the things I said is my husband and I have a stepson. He's 15 now, but he was 4 years old when we got married. And I always call him my son just because I love him dearly. But I said, one of the things I'm embarrassed to tell you is I don't know if Hobie and I made the right decision not to have a baby. And sometimes I think, oh no, do we make the right decision? And way TMI, he got a vasectomy and I cried all the way home. And he's like, what are you doing? I just got a surgery. I thought we agreed on this. And I'm like, I just need a moment to let go. And I know I don't want a baby, but sometimes it creeps up. So after I did that episode, I'm like, what am I doing talking about vasectomies and not having babies? And people, what am I telling them this for? I had that hangover. And then I thought, what do I love about other people? Because they're real and they tell me the good stuff behind the scenes, the life stuff. So I kept it.
I love it. What are the things that you love about other people when you're kind of watching their reel, REAL, not their highlight reel? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So I love when someone, okay, this is so silly. And I know I should let this one go, but I haven't yet. I love when people get on IG. This is mainly for the ladies with no makeup on. And I just think that's cool. Like they're gorgeous, I think, and they look different, of course. You know, when we're all made up, we all look different. And I love when they're just getting on and they're telling a story or they're taking me with them. I love that. I don't do much of that. I didn't know I was so vain until silly IG stories come out. Like, come on. But I do. I like the makeup free. Here I am. Let me take you into my house and tell you a funny story. I like those.
Hashtag I woke up like this. Right?
Yes, exactly. One day I'll get there.
Yes. That would be a really, really fun challenge.
Yeah, right? I'm not ready for it yet, though, but I'll get there.
So something that I've noticed, you've been really nurturing not just the community of people who are kind of watching you and maybe are not customers yet, but also the community that has already paid you. And I've noticed a lot of people, especially in the entrepreneurial space, who have started these big Facebook groups, and then they get so overwhelmed by the community that they're like, I gotta shut this down. And I've seen you really, really love up on your community, the ones who haven't paid, the ones who have paid. And so I'm just curious how you've been able to sustain that growth and loyalty and engagement over the long run.
I appreciate you saying that, because it's so funny. It leads right into what we just were talking about, or it picks up from there, and it's been video. So I make a commitment to get inside of one of my groups every week, live on video, Q&A, and they see me every single week. So they know I'm going to keep coming back. If they get stuck, I'm there for them. We do at least 30 questions in an hour. So it's really intense, but really fun. I try to keep it light, but it's intense in terms of tons of questions.
Right.
And so that has connected me to my students. Now, another thing is, though, we've also started to create more video, just off the cuff video for my non-student group, so that they can still see me, because it's not fair to just do video to people that pay you. Plus, it's not a good marketing strategy. You want to invite those people in no matter if they paid you money or not. So we've started doing more video in the non-student group as well. And I've noticed that there's a bigger connection. You really start to notice your connection when you get out from behind your computer and you show up at an event where your students would be spending time, and they act as though they know you really, really well. That's when I knew video was working for me, when people would come up and be so comfortable with me. And I thought that never happened before when I started doing more video. So that truly is how we keep it going. We also are on a mission in my business to, one, compassion is one of our core values. So we always want to have compassion with everybody that comes to us. And so because I have a community that needs a little extra hand-holding, that's so important to us. So my team embodies it as well. They know how important it is to me, so they reflect that in everything they do. And that I've seen has been a big, I just beam when somebody calls out Rochelle in my customer support department because she answered a question that was really hard. That's all I love more than anything, when someone else is doing it in my business as well.
Yeah. So this is a logistical question, but so for the group of non-students, how often do you post a video to them?
About every other week. So not a lot.
Yeah.
And you can only do so much.
Right.
And as much as I say I do video, it still doesn't come naturally to me. So flipping on a video camera is still a big deal. Yeah. And I actually have gotten to the point that they're not pristine. They're not perfect. I mess up and keep going. My dog, recently I did a video and he picks up a squeaky toy in the back as I'm making the video. And I say in the video, I am not re-recording this. We are continuing. So I'm getting better at that. But about every other week, we try to put a new video into the non-student group.
And you mentioned, your customer support people and them coming up and showing compassion for your community. Was there a time where it was hard for you to kind of let go and let your team also support and nurture your community?
Yes. And what's interesting about that, this was years ago when I had to let go and it just became too much. And I had found somebody on my team that really, above anyone I've ever known, wanted to take care of the customers more than me, meaning not more than me, but it was her number one goal. And she was my VA at the time. And so she just took that on, and I felt good because she had been with me for a while. It would have been hard for me to just hire someone and right away hand it over. But instead, she had been my VA. I was still in customer support. And then I was able to give it to her. And that transition felt a little bit more safe for me.
Yeah.
But something interesting happened. We just had a transition in customer support where one person left, and we're hiring right now for the new person. So someone on our team stepped in, and together, this person, Rochelle, and me, we've revamped the whole thing. And I realized we had a lot of canned responses. responses. And I hate that phrase, canned response, because it feels so canned. So I changed it to guided response. So we have a bunch of guided responses. And I encourage Rochelle, I said, I've rewritten all of these because here's what happened. I've been in business for a while. Other people were writing my responses to questions that I would never have answered that way. I felt like the heart was out of them. I felt like it wasn't the perfect information they needed. And if we were being honest, we weren't supporting at the level we needed to with some of those responses. And a lot of people had touched them. Too many hands in the pot. So I literally took months, and every day I'd kind of chip away like 20 minutes a day at rewriting all these guided responses. And then teaching Rochelle, I want you to tweak it. When they say this, you add your own flair here or there. It's really important to me that someone doesn't feel like they just got an automated response from me when they reached out. So we have put a huge effort into customer support this year, and it feels good to me. Yeah.
I love that. And I believe that you shared that you're an INFJ. Is that true, Myers-Briggs?
So funny you just asked that. I just did it again yesterday, and I am ISFJ.
That makes so much sense because you had your podcast about, are you being a visionary in your business?
Yes.
And that's usually the N.
And I wasn't. Yes. Being a visionary in my business is very hard for me. I want to get in and put together the project plans.
Right. I need you in my world.
Oh, too funny.
So you would say that you're more on the introvert spectrum.
1,000,000%. Yes.
And you want to change the world in your pajamas.
Yes. Amen, sister.
So how do you manage to have such a thriving global community online, being a professed introvert? And I believe that there's so many people, and I'm just curious from your perspective, because I think introverts actually have an upper hand in building community online because of their introverted nature.
Why is that? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I'm an ENFP, but I'm like 51% E, and I'm really extroverted around ideas, not necessarily people or strangers.
Interesting. Okay.
So I consider myself more introverted, and it's this intentional listening that introverts they're aware of what's going on around them. And with social media, I feel like there's this fair space of back and forth conversation where I don't know if you've ever been in a room with a lot of extroverted people and you try to kind of get your word in and you can't. Everyone just keeps speaking over you. And my husband would see me. He's like, I heard you, baby. And I'm like, oh. But on social media and online, there's this fair back and forth conversation that's happening. It's like, it's your turn to talk. And now it's my turn to talk. And I just think also there's that listening, the intentional listening that I think introverts have on their side.
I love that. I would never have thought about that. And it makes perfect sense. So definitely, and I hope I have some of that as an introvert, that I do slow down and listen to what they're saying or what they need or what they want. I also think that, I don't know, but it feels like I attract a lot of introverts. And so I'm very open about the fact that I don't necessarily love to speak on stage. I'm not a big traveler for business, and I feel really good behind this computer at my house. And so I'm very open and honest with it. And when you are more vulnerable, you attract people that can really relate to that. And so I feel like I have a very big audience of introverts that feel very safe around me because I'm not going to be wanting to be the center of attention and say, look at me, listen to me. I will never be that person. And I have an ego for sure. I mean, we all do, but I see my ego come out in moments that I'm embarrassed of. But in that situation, I don't need to be the center of attention. And I feel that they get a chance to shine as well.
That's
I hope.
Beautiful. Yes.
I hope they feel that way.
Yeah, I love that. That you're giving them that space and opportunity to shine, because that's what we all crave. That we are acknowledged and that we're seen and heard. And so, that's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if there's, and I know I'm sure there is, but a specific time, something you planned in your business where it didn't work out the way that you expected, and really curious how you were able to manage your expectations of, that setback. I feel a lot of my listeners, they're perfectionists in recovery, and, they're beating themselves up for when things don't go as planned. And I think it's really helpful to hear, you know, other people's stories of how they had an expectation of what they thought the result was going to be, and then it didn't end the way they thought that it was going to.
I do, for sure. So when I first started in the internet marketing world, I had come from corporate. So I had done launches on big scales. And then when I got out of corporate, I dabbled a little bit with consulting with an online marketer who had a huge audience and was doing $5 million launches. And I was part of it. I got to work on the launches and really learn the ropes. So when it came time to finally do my own thing, I remember it was a program called the Simple Social Media Formula or something like that. And it was my first online program that I had created myself. I created a 3-part video series. I mean, it was legit full-on program. And I remember sitting in my bed at our little condo years back, and my husband was at the fire station. So it was just me that day. And I remember hitting broadcast on the first email to go to my list of 600 people to let them know about this online training program. And I didn't realize it, but in the back of my head, I thought, I am going to make tons of money because I know how to launch. I've done it with big people before and they made millions. I'm making at least some of that. I didn't expect millions, but I probably was expecting $100,000 or something. Like, I knew how to do this. So I sent it out to crickets, and that launch, I might have made $1,000 after expenses. And I cried a lot. Like, I was devastated. I had a mentor at the time that I went to one of her masterminds, and she actually said, I feel like I'm walking around eggshells with you because I feel like you're going to crack at any minute because you can't even talk about it. And I said, I am devastated because look what they've done and look what I've done. And that's when I learned the lesson that you cannot compare the back end of your business to somebody else's front end. And these guys had been in business for years with teams. I mean, I was one girl first launch and hadn't even been on the scene. No one knew who I was, but I had really high hopes for myself. And because I thought that's what everyone else was doing, why not me? It took me a while to shake that off. And then I did it again and it wasn't great. And then I did it again. It was a little better. I definitely am the kind of girl that I've got to do it many times to finally see that success.
Yeah, I love your persistence because you're changing so many lives today. How did you move through several like meh launches? Like, I'm so curious because, you know, people can start to, you know, it's like one time, okay, 2 times, 3 times. It's like, am I really cut out to do this? Like, what kept you in the game?
Oh, so good. Such a good question. One of the things was I was doing consulting on the side when I launched my first online program. And for me to have security, I need some money coming in. I was paying the bills at the time more so than my husband. And so I did keep a few clients on the side that made me feel secure and made me feel valued because I was doing something great for them while this other thing wasn't working so well. So that was one thing. The other thing was each time it got a little bit better. And so I could see a little light shining through, which is a choice because I could have seen all the darkness around that little light. But I just thought, ooh, we've got 200 more people on this webinar this time, and I got 5 more sales than last time.
Right.
Like, that is a little step. Now, if that was the only thing I was doing and no money was coming in, truth be told, I would have freaked out, like even more so. So it was nice to have a little money coming in. I did not like to do consulting. I didn't want to do people's social media, but I kept that for about 2 years because I needed a little something coming in so I could make this work.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that because I think everyone thinks like, quit job, do a launch, make hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's like, oh, 2 years and still managing, you know, and I talk about cash projects and heart projects. So you have the cash project that's funding your dreams and that heart project. And the goal is ultimately that heart project can turn into a cash project too.
Ooh, but love it.
Sometimes you just got to have that thing on the side so that you don't burn out. And speaking of burnout, I'm curious if you have experienced of any of that and building a business online, being behind the screen, and you've had high growth, you're serving a lot of people. Has burnout been a part of the recipe for you on your journey?
Multiple times, actually. I wish I could say like one time I burned out, I fixed it and I'm good. Multiple times. I think quite honestly, it might even happen once a year. Now, as you get going and you learn from those, maybe it's not as bad of a burnout, but thinking of the first time I remember it happened, I was live launching a lot. And anyone who's live launched knows that, oh my gosh, it is so much work. And I do live webinars. So I think I had done 9 live webinars over 2 weeks. And that meant multiple times a day because we pushed them together. And I got to a point, and I teach webinars, and that's how it's my bread and butter. And I got to a point that I thought, if I ever have to do another webinar the rest of my life, I'm going to scream. Mm-hmm. Like I hated the thing that made me money that at one time I really enjoyed. Yeah. And so I realized we have a problem here. I was short with my husband. I mean, talk about weight. Like much of my weight issue is around feeling that stress of wanting to make this better and move forward and build the business. Now I'm learning that that's a choice and I don't have to do that. Yeah. But for so long, I put the weight of the world on my shoulders. So I reached burnout for the first time, I think in 2011. I had started my business in 2009 and I realized something has to change. I did learn in that moment, I literally stepped back. I stopped doing webinars for a while. Didn't create anything new. I was okay with the fact that not tons of money was coming in. I knew how to make money now. I could get back to it. And I learned the art of do less, make more. I never believed it until I had to slow down and do it myself. And so in 2012, 2013, I learned how to do less, make more. The sad thing is I still fall back into it where I'm doing more because I think that will make a bigger impact, more money, more people. And then I like this light bulb goes off like, whoa, Amy, you've already proven you can do less and make more. And so I have to recalibrate probably once a year.
Yeah. No, that's really, thank you.
I wish I didn't. I'm almost embarrassed to tell you that because I shouldn't have to. I learned enough by now, but I'm a driver. And so I want to push. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I'm miserable. I need to step back.
Right. So I'm curious, for the 9 webinar rockstar tour in 2 weeks, what was driving you to feel like I've got to do 9?
So great question. One, they were working so well that I had a friend of mine who I still dearly love said, if 3 webinars are working so well for you, what about 6? And then somehow I got to 9. So it just was like, oh yeah, didn't think about it. Didn't think about what it would do to my body, my voice, my psyche. I just more. Like, of course, that makes perfect sense. And because I had found that thing that worked for me, why not do it to excess? Like, good thing I'm not into drugs or alcohol because we'd have a big problem there. But in my work, it is my drug in many ways. So that was one thing. A friend of mine who I really trusted recommended it. And then I also have to be very careful with feeling as though if I gave my word to my team that I can't change it because everyone knew we were doing 9. Everyone had worked hard for 9. And I felt like, what are they going to think of me if I said, I don't want to do this anymore? Like, let's pull back. I cared very deeply what other people think of me, and that can get me in a lot of trouble. So that is something over the last probably 2 years that I have to say, it doesn't matter what they think of me. I know my heart. I know what my intention is. And if they know me, they will understand we got to pull this back. So I cared very deeply about what it meant or what it said to other people.
Yeah. So what would be a big opportunity that you've said no to recently to do less and make more?
Yes. Okay. So I was offered I won't name names, but I was offered a really big speaking gig on somebody's stage consistently. And they were going to pay me a lot of money. They were like going on a tour. And if I showed up, I think it was 7 different cities. And when you're in that city, you're not just speaking on stage, but you're doing these little mini breakouts. Yeah. And the money was great. And because my ego sometimes gets in the way, I'm thinking my name associated with their name, like this is amazing. And I thought about it for a hot 10 minutes. And then I realized, what? I don't like to travel for business. I don't need that money. I could find a different way to make money for sure. Not that I don't need it, but there's other ways for me to make money in a way I really enjoy. And then also, I knew that if I go on the road, I will be working myself to the bone and then to keep up the projects I promised. So I said no to that. And I feel I can breathe again. Like for a little minute, I thought, what would that feel like? And I couldn't breathe.
Right.
And so I said no. And definitely we've had it would happen this year. We had an amazing year so far. And I really do believe that's an example of saying no and bringing in opportunities that serve you better.
Yeah. And I love the question of how would that make me feel?
Yes.
I think we don't slow down and pause enough to really embody what a decision might feel like on the other side, and taking in not just the money results, but like, oh, how would my body feel? How would my family feel? We're kind of just looking at that monetary thing on the other side, or the acknowledgement and association, right, with a really big organization. So I love that you paused and really asked yourself that question.
Yeah, I think it's so important. I think I learned that from Danielle Laporte a long time ago. How do you want to feel? And I remember, because I'm so business minded, I'm like, feel? What are you talking about? I got strategies to put together. I've got funnels. Feel.
Right.
And then I realized, wait a second, this is a big part of the puzzle.
Yeah. And then you mentioned, your annual burnout party. We'll just call it a party.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
So what is your recipe to reset and replenish when you've kind of gotten to that place, and how do you reset?
Good question. The first thing I do is I talk to my team and I let them know. I have a small team of 6, and I let them know, okay, I've reached to that point, and I'm sure you all feel it too, because anything I feel, they're going to feel, because we work so closely. So I put some parameters around what we're going to do and what we're not going to do. Really, the recipe for that part is taking some stuff off our plate. So we were going to do this affiliate launch. We're not doing it. Let's take it off. It's not happening. This can wait for a little bit longer. And once we get that kind of settled and we realize we got crazy with the yeses and we need to pull back, I then take some time off. So Hobie and I love to go on staycations, or we love to go to Mexico. So we'll go away. There is no computer allowed, no connection with the team. I know they've got it. And I literally physically have to go away. I can't stay at my house and just relax. I will want to go into my home office. I really enjoy working. Yeah. And so taking me out of my normal comfy environment, putting me somewhere that's wonderful and relaxing, is definitely the recipe for me to unplug for a while.
Yeah, I do the same, where I'm like, I just like, it's all in or all out. So I'm curious if because I think a lot of ambitious women who are building businesses, and they actually love their work, and there's this sense of validation that's received.
Oh, yes.
Create this work and you get results, and then people are like, you're so awesome. You've changed my life. Like, that feels pretty dang amazing. And then you come home to your day to day, and your kids and husbands and all, they're just like, hey, did you do the dishes? It's not as gratifying. So there is this addiction to the work and the output. And I'm just curious, how do you create some of those micro pauses to reset and replenish on a week to week basis, or even day to day?
So for me, I actually started, so here's the truth. The goal was to take Fridays off. So this is something I've always wanted to do. And I too, totally, really obsessed with my work, but I also knew it was feeling overwhelming more often than not. So I decided to take Fridays off this year. Now, that didn't work so well, and I found myself sliding back into Friday. So this is what I did. I realized I am such a baby step kind of girl. I can't just go all in.
Right.
And so what I did is I decided noon on Friday, and I'm off. And actually, it's wonderful because I don't have that anxiety of, oh my gosh, it's Friday and I didn't get to everything I wanted to get done. I work on it in the morning. Noon comes, if Hobie's home, we get to spend time together. If not, it's just me. And I love it. But I had too much anxiety for the full day. Now, there's probably lessons to be learned, and I probably could have made it work. But I'd love to get to full Fridays, but I'm just going to do half day now.
I love it. And I bet you get so much done on Friday.
Oh, isn't that funny how that works? When you only have 3 or 4 hours, you actually get it all done.
Yeah. I love it.
Great.
So you are a content creator. I believe it's one of your superpowers. You're so great at not only creating it, but also teaching it. And I'm just curious how you continue to come up with new content when you've been talking and teaching about the same thing to the same audience over the years. And really just how do you creatively stay connected to your work when it's kind of, rinse and repeat, and how can you create new ways to say the same thing?
It's so true. So sometimes I have to remind myself that saying the same thing in different ways is actually okay, because people are learning, and the first time they hear it, it might not click or make sense to them. So that was one thing I worried about, like how many different ways can I talk about a webinar and how to create a webinar? And I've talked about it all. But then, and now I'm on episode 200 and something of my podcast. So I've talked about webinars many, many times on the podcast. But here's what I kind of came to the realization. If I've talked about a topic a lot, one thing is that maybe I could find other people to talk about their own experiences and share their own stories. So I've been making a bigger effort to include other people. Tell me your stories with webinars. Where did you struggle? What did you do to get through it? And so that's been really fun. So the stories aren't just coming from me. And so I've loved that, but we make them really actionable. So what did you do then? And what page did you create? Or what did your registration look like? So they're still very actionable in terms of the marketing strategy. And then another thing, and creating content, we've gotten better at surveying our audience and literally asking them, what do you want? And we love the book Ask and Ryan Levesque, and we use it inside of our business. And so we've created many surveys to different segments of the list. So this week, a survey is going out to just my students inside of one of my private Facebook groups. So that means that it's not every student, because not everybody loves a Facebook group. It's just the students inside of the Facebook group. What do you want more of? What will get you to talk more in this group, click more, add value, answer other people's questions? Like, what do you need from us? So we are always asking the question, what do you want more of? What do you need? Where are you struggling?
I love that. Oh, it's so, so good. So I know, the online space, it's constantly changing and evolving, and the way that people consume content and their attention. And just curious how you've, really kept up with those ever-changing tides, and what's on your radar as you look ahead of the trends and changes that are happening.
So one thing is that I do a pretty good job of staying in my own lane. So as internet marketing changes and social media changes and things are moving so quickly, I pay attention because I need to for my own business and because my students are going to ask. But at the same time, I don't pretend to know it all. And so when I'm answering 30 questions in a private Facebook group, I do not hesitate to say, that is not something I know, nor have I studied enough, but here's a resource that you might want to look into. I bet they're going to have a better answer than I will. So I don't try to know it all. And that actually makes me feel a little bit better, because I feel very overwhelmed if people expect me to know everything there is about internet marketing.
Yeah.
But when you ask me a question about my area of expertise, I'm going to know it, and I'm going to be able to offer some really great advice. So that's one thing. The other thing is, with it always changing and kind of keeping up with it, I also keep my business pretty simple. So with that, I don't have a lot of bells and whistles. I don't do a lot of different things. I create online courses, and that's 90% of the revenue. I don't coach, consult, a small group. I don't have any of that right now. Maybe that will change down the road. But keeping it simple allows me not to have to change a million things when, let's say, Facebook rolls out something new. So that feels good as well. So that's basically how I feel that I stay up on it. And at the same time, it changes so much you almost can't. So you do what you can. But I mean, it's just so tough. But at the same time, I think you were asking kind of, what does the future look like? What's ahead?
Yeah.
And for me, I'm getting that feeling now, and I haven't even mentioned this anywhere but to you right now, that I do want to start making deeper connections with just a small group and watching them go from one place to a really new, amazing level in their business. That might be a mastermind, if something like that. I've always said, no, I'm not ready for that. But I wanted to wait till I felt like a calling toward it. And I do love the idea of working with, let's say, a small group of women on their business to get them to a place they never thought was even possible. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I can't ignore the calling. So we'll see.
So that one, I just love that I can't ignore the calling. Can you just tell me more about that? Because I actually just did an interview with Tara Moore, of the author of Playing Big.
Oh, yeah.
She talks about, the calling and how it's almost part of the hero's journey, right? By Joseph Campbell, where you resist the calling at first. And even with me, stepping away from Simple Green Smoothies and selling my half of the business, it was just this calling that I couldn't quiet anymore. And I knew that that was the next chapter for me in my own story. So I'm just curious if you could share, just what that feeling of the calling is happening for you right now.
Yes. So that's such a great question. So with masterminds, if I tell a friend, any of my friends right now, I'm thinking of maybe doing a mastermind, the first thing they tell me is, for years, you said you never wanted to do that. That's not right for you. You don't feel comfortable in that setting. And they're right. I have pushed it off. The thought has come into my head. No, I can't do that. No, I'm not ready. No. So I have definitely resisted it for a long time. And just recently, I got a little bit more quiet about it. And to me, when something keeps coming up, if I just kind of get quiet, I have a sauna in my backyard. Sounds so fancy, I know, but it's not. I have a sauna in my backyard. I got into the sauna and I just was quiet for a moment. I'm not great at meditating, so it's something that I don't do regularly. And all of a sudden I heard it would be kind of fun. Like, there, maybe not those words. It wasn't like a voice, but like, I kind of like this. There's something there. So I think it took me a while to resist, then get quiet. And to me, it's all about getting very honest. And if I was very honest, I'm nervous about it. I don't know if I'd be great at it, but I'm going to listen to that voice saying it would be kind of fun. So,
oh my goodness. I'm so excited. And I love that you are like, how can I keep getting quiet? And it's like knocking, like, but this would be fun.
I think Oprah talks about that. I don't know the way she talks about it. I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly, but she talks about a whisper that gets louder and louder. So listen to it when it's a whisper, because when it's really loud, you've kind of gone beyond. Right. You've missed the mark and something's wrong now. So I'm listening to the whisper right now.
I love that so much. And also, that's when you're on the edge of something really beautiful, is that you do get a little nervous about it. And it's like, oh, this will be fun and exciting. It also challenges you and stretches you. There's something just so much fun in the discovery process of figuring it out, which I'm sure you experienced when you first started your online business. And so it's just this new level of mastery of like, oh, I've got to read books about this, and just, asking my friends and getting insight and ideas. So I think that it'll be a very, very fun journey to be what I like to say nerve-sighted, which is nervous and excited.
I love that. That's so good.
Great. So, before we wrap up, I'm curious, what is your why right now? What vision are you moving towards? And I'd really just love to hear that.
Oh, this is good. So my why, what vision am I moving toward? My why is I genuinely want to see my students get to a place that they have never even imagined was possible for them. And I want them to realize that they genuinely have what it takes to get there. So there's been this big vision in my business to truly make it all about my tribe and all about my students and build them up, show them what's possible. And then I've added this conversation around the mindset that I've never had before with them, that it's not just the strategies, but it's also what you're thinking and feeling and all that stuff that I started the conversation with. So I've got this big vision to see my students get to this place. And because of that, we are so dedicated to creating products and programs and offers that will help them get there. Hence this one that's a little bit more intimate, because I can get a group there a lot faster if I get in the trenches with them. So that's basically what we're going for this year, and where we have that's our eye on the prize.
Amy, thank you. Thank you so much. I love your heart and your commitment to compassion and grace. And I would just like to know, for the final question, is there anything else we haven't covered that you'd love to share?
Oh gosh, I feel like we covered it all. There's nothing extra, but I appreciate you going there. Like, these are not the normal questions I get asked on a podcast about marketing. And I love it. I welcome it. So you've created something great here. I am not surprised. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Amy. And I just believe everyone who's listening right now has, if they don't already love you, they have fallen in love with you in this conversation. So thank you.
Love it. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much for your heart and attention in listening to Lead with Love. If this message, leading with love in life and business, and remembering the humans and beating hearts behind the numbers and all of that good stuff, I would love for you to take the time to leave an honest review. It would mean the world to me, and it also helps more people find out about the goodness and helping spreading more love in the world, which we really, really need. So I would really appreciate that, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.